We're so intentional about fleeing from sexual immorality, fleeing from acts of greed, the stealing and the adultery and all of these things that are so magnified. And yet, this is God saying, 6 things I hate: a proud look. These simple instructions are actually deadly to God. They're things that God loathes because they impede on our ability to love. Only God is to be exalted. So it's either I'm getting the exaltation or it's God. And if it's me, then I've made myself an idol. So who's getting the glory? God gets all the glory, and yet he's not prideful himself. It takes wisdom to know how to handle the form of exaltation that comes with humility. This humility comes from the point of hiding yourself in the identity of Christ. We're emulating this image that God painted through his son, Jesus. That's how we humble ourselves, guys. That's how we're destroying these arguments. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Hazel Nima, if you're new here. But if you aren't, you probably already knew that. You are all welcome once again to the 2 or 3 pod where God is in our midst. Now, today there is no wasting time, okay? We're jumping right into it because the revelation, guys. I always feel like, okay, I want to give a backstory. Let me just waste a bit of time. I mean, God, man. There's just a way. Every single message I prepare, and at this point, I'll even stop saying I'm preparing them because 5 hours before right now, when I'm just speaking, I didn't have a message. I didn't have anything to say. And I've procrastinated recording this for so long. It's probably been over a week now. And I've been telling myself that it's because I didn't have a message. And now this is God actually teaching me. In 5 hours with God, I have been able to finish up a message that I never even began. Because this isn't even the one I had planned to put out, okay? And this backstory is quite relevant to what we're about to talk about today. Funny enough. I'm telling you, God, man. There's just a way he twists the gears and, has everything just moving and turning and working to even just teach us something. We said that we're still in this series where we're trying to understand spiritual warfare. And for the past, I don't even know how many weeks now, we've been trying to decipher 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 3 to 6. So we're just going to read it for context. Perhaps this is your first episode. Perhaps you're not new to the podcast, but you also haven't been engaging with this series. So for context, we're going to just read the whole passage. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 3 to 6. For though we live in the world, we're not carrying on a worldly war. And we talked about that. We have an episode for that. If you missed it, I'll highly recommend that you just go and listen to where all of this began. We are not carrying on a worldly war. We had that understanding. Verse 4 says, for the weapons of our warfare are not worldly, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. And we talked about how our weapons are mighty in God. Again, if you have not listened to that episode, it would give you great context for what we're still continuing to decipher. Verse 5 says, we destroy arguments and every proud obstacle to the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ. Now we are going to take the first part of this, which says that we are destroying arguments and every proud obstacle to the knowledge of God. I originally thought that this was one continuous thought process. And I mean, it is, but these are 2 very different ideas, if I may say. Paul is telling us that we are destroying arguments. But the second part talks about taking thoughts captive to obey Christ. And originally, as I said, I thought that we were just going to talk about thoughts. But destroying arguments, destroying proud obstacles to the knowledge of God, it's very much in line with what we also do and say, rather than just what we are thinking. And up until today, up until 5 hours ago, and somewhere in the middle of that time, I never really knew what this verse fully meant. I probably still don't. But what I've gotten to see has single-handedly convicted me, my ancestors, and whoever you are who is going to get convicted. It, hey, we're destroying arguments and every proud obstacle to the knowledge of God. And we're also going to read how other versions of the Bible place this same idea. Okay? We're destroying arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God. We're destroying arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the true knowledge of God. All these are different versions of how the same idea is put. And I don't know. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know if it's a flaw, guys, but every time I see different words for the same thing, I just have to look up the meaning. And I love how I'm so open to different versions of the Bible, because when I finally went to ESV, I mean, if you've been here before, you know how much I love reading from the Amplified Version. But from the ESV, it gave me so much in terms of cross references. It gives cross references for days. Guys, I've been studying this for, as I said, the past 5 hours. It's been giving cross references for days. And the first scripture that it took me to was Isaiah 2, verse 11. And Isaiah says, "The haughty looks of man shall be brought low, and the pride of men shall be humbled, and the Lord alone will be exalted in that day." And then I'm like, kwani, this is about pride and humility. You know, it brought in such a different perspective to this verse. We destroy arguments and every high thing that is exalting itself against the knowledge of God. And now these things that we are talking about was casting an even wider net, whereby man, human beings, you and I, can in ourselves be this high thing that is trying to exalt itself against the knowledge of God. Because that's what Isaiah 2:11 is telling us. The looks of man, the pride of men will be humbled. Only the Lord will be exalted in that day. And we're going to stick to this Isaiah 2 as we continue with this same episode. There's so much that is telling us about pride, about the consequence of pride, about going against God, and what that does at the end of it, you know. Another cross-reference that the ESV gave was in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 18, or rather 19, but for context, we can start from 18. And it was speaking to what the knowledge of God means. It's saying, "For the word of the cross, the gospel, is folly to those who are perishing. But to those who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the cleverness of the clever I will thwart." So the knowledge of God actually refers to his ways that are higher than our ways. And so whatever it is that is trying to exalt itself up against this wisdom of God that we are being told here in 1 Corinthians, we shall destroy, and we should destroy. This is an instruction, it is a warning, but it's also correction for how we've been living our lives all at once. This verse, 1 Corinthians, it even tells us, where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? Isaiah told us that haughtiness that man has, the pride that man possesses, will be humbled, and only God will be exalted. And so these two scriptures, they speak to two different parts of what we are trying to decipher, and yet they are still talking about the same thing. And it amazes me how much cross-referencing in the Bible always just speaks to one thing. It's like, I don't know, guys. I'm just amazed by a lot of things. But anyway, we're now getting to see that this verse, 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5, part A, is actually speaking to pride and humility. It's speaking to arrogance. It's speaking to what it actually does, what it says about us, about how we relate to God, and eventually how it will make us relate to men, to our fellow brothers and sisters. We said that we're going to hold on to Isaiah chapter 2. For context's sake, I had to read the whole chapter, and I got to see that not only does it talk about haughtiness, the pride of men, God judging the nations, rejecting people because they've turned away from God, they've gone to all these other people, divinations. But he's also talking about idolatry. And I got to that part, and I was even more amazed at how God works. Because if you've been following, we did an idolatry series before embarking on this warfare series. And this is a verse that now connects the two. Isaiah 2 verse 20. In that day of judgment, men will cast forth their idols of silver, their idols of gold, which they made for themselves to worship, to the moles and to the bats. On that day of judgment, we've been told haughty looks of men will be brought low. The pride of men will be humbled. Only the Lord will be exalted. He'll be exalted against all the high mountains, against all the lofty hills, against every high tower, against literally everything. And the idols shall utterly pass away. Destroying arguments, it's not just putting down pride, it's also putting aside idolatry. And recently I was even reading 1 Corinthians. I believe Corinthians just has a lot. It has so much, so much when it comes to understanding how the spiritual realm is. 1 Corinthians 10:14. I read this the other day. It literally told us the meaning of idolatry in a fresh light. Therefore, my beloved, run from any sort of idolatry, and that includes loving anything more than God, participating in anything that leads to sin and enslaves the soul. An idol is that thing that you have placed above God, above the love of God, is what 1 Corinthians told us, and above the devotion to God, as we said in previous scriptures as we were doing that series. That thing that you worship, that thing that our energy goes to, we're also being told we're destroying that argument because that thing has been exalted against the knowledge of God. And I don't even know how to do this episode, honestly. As I said, I didn't even plan on saying all this. As I'm speaking, I'm still learning. So I genuinely just pray that the Holy Ghost helps me here to bring and to drive all these points home. Let's just continue, man. James chapter 4 and verse 6. If there's one thing that I've come to know about God, God keeps revealing himself to us in our walk of faith. From today, if there's one thing that I've gotten to see firsthand through the reading of the word, is just how much he hates pride. God hates pride. And I've not really done the research to back up what I'm about to say, but I have not seen, thus far, I have not seen as many scriptures talk about other sins such as, I don't know, sexual sin or stealing, as much as I've seen scriptures about God hating pride and arrogance. Prideful people, arrogant people. And I even had to ask God why. Like, actually, why? Pride in itself is a form of idolatry. Pride makes us exalt ourselves. It makes us exalt ourselves over God. And we're going to expound on that just now. Just now. James 4 verse 6. James reminds us that we were told by Jesus, I believe in Matthew even, we were told that God abases the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. So if we're exalting ourselves, God will put us down. Not only won't we be exalted, but we will be humbled by God himself. He opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Haughtiness, arrogance, it provokes the anger of the Lord. And as I've said, in the last 5 hours, I've cross-referenced so many scriptures, especially in Proverbs. And I believe you can just do a deep dive on your own. Just search up the word pride or arrogance and see how many Proverbs you will get Proverbs 6:16 to 17. 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 which are an abomination to him. And what does it begin with? Haughty eyes. Haughty eyes. The first thing that it actually lists. And I loved reading this from the Amplified Version because it even gave a definition. It said a proud look. And a proud look is that attitude that makes one overestimate oneself and discount others. So remember, we're trying to see why God hates pride, because it's an attitude that discounts others and that provokes the anger of the Lord. Because that's what the Egyptians did with the Israelites. We're now getting to see that pride births so many other sins. It's not just about the self-esteem that one has. It's not just about exalting oneself. It's about every other trickling sin that comes about because of that exaltation. Slavery is birthed out of pride. We've said Egyptians and Israelites. We're going to see how pride played such a huge role in that slavery. Arrogance is an exaggerated sense of one's importance or abilities. Pride births so many other sins, guys. If I was even thinking of all the other sins that I can't think of, I didn't really get to many, but we've said slavery was one of them. You know, we can reason this out. Stealing. Think about your government, okay? Stealing from a point of greed. What is it that might make someone think this person who has earned a whole living, who has earned their living from honest work, does not deserve that wealth that they have earned? Let me take it. Let me just keep it for them. Let me borrow this real quick, man. You know, what is it? It's that importance. It's that sense of importance in your own self. It's that estimation of oneself that makes you discount others, that makes us discount others, others' property, others' feelings, others' hard work. Because even for myself, I believe I'm in a season where God is really teaching me a lot. And this is one of those things that propelled some of the convictions I've been getting. Currently, I really need to learn how to love people the way that God loves, the way that Jesus loved, right? And I've even gotten to see how pride is a hindrance to love. Pride is such a hindrance to love. And it's crazy because this is one of those commandments that just fly over my head. As Christians especially, or even just Christians who are trying to intentionally work out their salvation, we're so intentional about fleeing from sexual immorality, fleeing from acts of greed, you know, the stealing and the adultery and all of these things that are so magnified. And yet this is God saying, 6 things I hate: a proud look. Just the look. That attitude of yours, I hate that. That heart of yours that is so willing to come up with evil plans, I hate that. That tongue of yours that is always lying, I hate that. You who is so enticed by rumors and spreading them, I hate that. And we never really take heed of these commandments. We're always so actively trying to respond to all the others while disregarding, if I may say, the simple ones. And I've gotten to see that these simple instructions are actually deadly to God. They're things that God loathes because they impede on our ability to love. Someone who lies, someone who spreads rumors, someone who discounts others with their pride, someone who sheds innocent blood, someone who creates wicked plans, someone who is swift to run to evil, someone who's a false witness. It impedes on our ability to love. Pride single-handedly goes against the teachings of Jesus. Remember what Jesus told the Pharisees, or was it the lawyer? That lawyer that wanted to corner him. So now that we have all these things, what should we follow? And Jesus says, love. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. That is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is this: love your neighbor as you love yourself. So I just sat down and tried to see all the little ways in which we're actually proud as human beings. Because as I said, these are the simple instructions that we always overlook, but they are so important. Imagine you've lived a righteous life, you have abstained, you have kept away from drunkenness, having a party spirit. And then that thing that makes you face God's wrath is the fact that you can't stop gossiping. As in, mind you, you're gossiping in church. We take these sins like they're negative habits. They're actually sins, and they're deadly sins that are an abomination to the Lord. Pride has so many accounts in the Bible where people are facing wrath, where God says, I won't even regard you for your pride because you've exalted yourself. Only God is to be exalted. So it's either I'm getting the exaltation or it's God. And if it's me, then I've made myself an idol. So who's getting the glory? We're trying to see why God hates pride, and we're trying to see what he values instead. Case in point, Satan. Case in point, Satan. We're being told that this was once an angel Lucifer, who wanted to take God's glory. He wasn't satisfied because angels are some high beings, they're high creatures, but he wasn't satisfied. Discontentment. And he wanted to take God's glory. He wanted to be exalted above God. And what was the consequence of that? Hell. In Revelation, we get to see that whole battle between Satan and his friends, his army of angels who also wanted to go against God, battling with Angel Michael. They're being thrown out of heaven. It sounds like such a dramatic thing, man. I wish I could see that. Like just that imagery. Or if there was like a movie of that sounds so dramatic. And so hell was created for Satan and his army of angels, fellow angels, right? No man, no human being was meant to go to hell. And that's something that I heard from a pastor just the other day on Instagram. It's crazy how Instagram is becoming a big source of my sermons lately. But the man just made it clear. Can't remember which pastor it was. Hell was not meant for human beings. It was Pastor Billy Graham. It was meant for Satan and his angels. But in the meantime, because he's going there eventually, but in the meantime, he will try and bring down as many human beings as he can with him on this earth. It is God's desire that everyone goes to heaven, that everyone gets to sit face to face with him, to see God. We're his children after all. But this is Satan who tried to exalt himself. And then this is us, here on earth, human beings, also trying to exalt ourselves. I'm trying to paint a picture here, so just stay with me. So we've seen what God loathes, that was in Satan. And we've seen what God values, and that's what he sent to show us, as this is the mark of a great person in my kingdom, Jesus. Jesus was God in flesh. Jesus carried the Spirit of God, but he came as a son of a carpenter. He came riding on a donkey. He came born in a manger. Jesus, who said that even foxes have somewhere to sleep, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. The Son of God himself has nowhere to lay his head. A lowly spirit. God is showing us two creatures, two supernatural beings, one who exalted himself and one who brought himself down to that level, not because he had no other option, but because he chose to follow the will of God. So everything that looks like Satan's actions goes against the ministry of Jesus. It goes against that image that God is trying to paint to us. Do as Jesus did. Say what Jesus said. Help in the manner, love in the manner that Jesus did. Proverbs 16:19 tells us, it is better to be of a lowly spirit with the poor than to divide the spoil with the proud. And that in human wisdom makes no sense. No sense at all. If I have a chance to sit at the table with the kings, Why do I have to bring myself down to be one of our lowly spirit with the poor? It doesn't make sense in human wisdom. Sometimes we read these verses and it seems like such a simple instruction, but yet when we come to our daily lives, we're the ones who want to cut the line in every single queue that we get in this world. We're the ones who want to overtake on the road. Pakata, we're causing jams, we're causing gridlocks. You want to overtake all the 20 cars at a row because apparently where we are going is far more important than everyone else. There's so many ways that pride manifests in our lives. We just don't see it because to us, it's just how we are. You know, we've even made pride a personality trait. People who are egoistic, and we call it confidence. We call it aggressive personalities. No, it is a sin. It is pride. It is a haughty spirit. It is a proud look that looks upon people who don't have status in this world. We disregard them. We steal from them because we see ourselves as more important. And we can. Why not? I have the power to do this. Why not? But Jesus had the power. Jesus had so much power to even remove himself from that cross. But if he executed that power, he would be going against God's will. And that's what we need to see it as. Us acting in our pride, in that power that we have because of our status, is going against the will of God. We need to choose humility. And that's how we destroy that argument. That's how we destroy arguments in every high thing that is exalting itself against the knowledge of God. We choose humility. We put aside pride, which is idolatry. As we are moving on to the next part of what this verse is saying, Proverbs 22, verse 22 to 23. Do not rob the poor because he is poor. I don't know why I stopped studying the book of Proverbs. It was so good. It's even becoming better now that we have more context to what God values. Do not rob the poor because he is poor, or crush the afflicted at the gate. For the Lord will plead their cause and despoil of life those who despoil them. Now we are getting to see some of the consequences. Pride and the outcome of pride not only provokes the Lord to anger, but this is God. This is this just judge, the God of vengeance, who will despoil those who despoil the poor. Oppression is derived from pride. Oppressing other people is derived from pride. Bullying other people is derived from pride. Of course, and other things, but if you really look at it, guys, if we really look at it, what is it that makes someone put their own feelings, put their own interests above those of others? And I'm saying this as someone who does this on a daily basis. As I said, I've been convicted properly. I've been convicted heavily. Because I'm here trying to ask God that I really want to know how to love like Jesus. And yet I leave the house and place myself above almost everyone that I meet. So how is it that I will love them? How can I love such a person? The type of love that Jesus has called us to, what greater love is there than to put down your own life for a person, for a friend? And even the book of Romans, I believe, tells us that even just putting down your life for a friend is something of high value. How much more someone who's a sinner? How can I love like that if I cannot even put myself down? If I cannot even humble myself to the level of that person I want to love? We're putting down every single argument because I've gotten to see that something else that the enemy is so quick to do is steal our love. The moment we are devoid of love, that love of God, that's when anger creeps up in our lives, offense creeps up in our lives. And even Matthew talks about this. Matthew talks a lot about love. If he can steal our love, guys, and destroying every argument, everything that is exalting itself against the knowledge of God. Because in this spiritual warfare, we need humility, we need love, we need a lowly spirit. Because sometimes even just getting quickly irritated causes us to do so many things, say so many things that we later regret. Getting offended at people is something that is referred to as the bait of Satan. Because if our love has run cold and we are quickly offended, then we won't forgive. That forgiveness will birth so much hate within us. It will continue making us saying the most vile and doing the most vile things. It's just that trickle effect. We need to just see it as what it actually is. We need spiritual eyes and ears. We need to be spiritually alert, guys. Pride is it's not a habit. It's not a personality trait. It's being overly confident, esteeming oneself as more important, one's abilities as more important. This I need to go fast attitude does a lot in making us disobey God. We just don't see it. And as we have said, whatever it is we're trying to decipher here, this scripture, we've already talked about the first part, right? It has two parts. We're destroying arguments and every high thing that's trying to exalt itself. And the second part, it's against the knowledge of God. And we said that this ESV version took us to 1 Corinthians. What is this knowledge of God? Every time we try and place our own wisdom above God's wisdom, it's a manifestation of pride, but it's also a whole entire thing on its own because it has its own consequences. Us believing that our ways are better, us believing that we know better than God, right? That's what it's speaking to. 1 Corinthians told us, what is the wisdom of the wise? God thwarts the cleverness of the clever. And honestly, in the beginning, as I was seeing all these cross references, it didn't make sense. We're talking about pride, humility. We're talking about knowledge, wisdom. What's the connection? We're being told putting down one thing, putting down pride, makes God exalt you. Walking in humility. That's what James tells us in James 4:10. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will exalt you. Right? He will exalt you. Instead of you, or rather us exalting ourselves, we will be exalted if we choose not to act in the power of our pride. It's a bit ironic, actually. It's a bit ironic. If we don't exalt ourselves, we will be exalted at the end of it. And then now Proverbs 11:2 tells us, when pride comes, then comes disgrace. We know that pride has a lot of consequences, and we're still going to talk about that. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, because we've tried to exalt ourselves. But with the humble is not only exaltation, as we've read in James, but Proverbs is telling us, with the humble is wisdom. I reached this point and I was like, it's all connected. It's all connected. The pieces started falling in place. Pride equals disgrace because you've tried to exalt yourself. But humility brings exaltation. It also brings wisdom. And I remember there was a time we were talking a lot about wisdom. I can't remember what episode it was, but we really centered on Proverbs. The spirit of wisdom. We said that it is a she. The spirit of wisdom speaking to us, telling us, if you honor me, if you hold me in high regard, this is the result you'll get out of it. Proverbs 4:8, prize her highly, prize wisdom, and she will exalt you. So it's not only the humility, but us walking in wisdom will exalt us in a way that God ordained, because He is the one exalting us. Our human nature that just wants more, that thinks that God is withholding from us. Right from Adam and Eve, they were given the whole garden, but they still wanted more. It is human nature, but putting down that and regarding wisdom, the wisdom of God that says, in my humility, just like Jesus did, if I put down and disregard the power that I have in my hands right now to satisfy my flesh, I will be exalted. And that exaltation does not make sense in the moment. You won't even see how it will benefit you. We never even see it. But of course, it becomes clearer later on. It's crazy how God works sometimes. But all the pieces will fall in place because He sees everything. He sees the sacrifices that we make in Christianity. And He has promised us in His word, if we are regarding wisdom highly, she will honor us. It's a promise. And God sticks to His promises. If anything, God will stick to his promise. We're being told to turn away from man. Turn away from man. The wisdom of man is worldly. It's not a wisdom that can decipher the spiritual realm, that can decipher spiritual truths and obtain spiritual promises. The wisdom of man is limited to this realm. It's sensual, it's worldly. I forgot what verse speaks about that. We're being told in Isaiah, turn away from man. And I love what the Amplified Version says. Isaiah 2 verse 22. We're being told, stop regarding man, whose breath of life is in his nostrils for so little time. For why should he be esteemed? Why should man? At this point, I was like, we're but dust. We're just dust. Guys, we're dust. Sisi and those pots of clay, ni damu tu. As in, we were made from dust, and God simply breathed life into us through our nostrils. We are but flesh, nyama. So why should we be esteemed, especially in this realm, in this earthly realm? Because in the spiritual realm, we're leaving our bodies behind. So why should we be esteemed in our bodily form? We're being told, turn away from man, stop regarding man. It takes wisdom to know how to handle the form of exaltation that comes with humility. The exaltation that God gives takes wisdom to even steward. Because, funny enough, we can even be prideful, proud in the things of God. It's crazy. I can come here to you and boast about all the knowledge that I've gained in my Bible study. And that's why I'm so grateful to a really huge extent that God also teaches me as I'm speaking. He has put me in a position whereby I will wait for that message till 5 hours before. You know what I mean? And I honestly love it. I can never really boast in the knowledge that God gives me for this podcast. I can never. Because he has proven time and again how it's not even coming from me. I have no grounds to boast. And so even as I choose to be humble, that exaltation that he gives me needs wisdom to steward. Because I'll still be tempted to go back to that point where I'm like, God has exalted me. And I can attribute that exaltation to the knowledge that I have. Knowledge puffs up. That's what Paul says. Knowledge puffs up. Even knowledge about the things of the Bible can make us proud. People can be studying scriptures for days just so that they can be seen as either holier than thou or the most knowledgeable debater in the Bible study. I mean, pride is so sneaky. We not only need that wisdom, but it needs to be that wisdom of God. That doesn't make sense in human sense. And the biggest case in point for this is God himself. David tells us time and again, come, let us rejoice, exalt the name of the Lord, magnify his name, lift his name on high. The Lord is exalted above all, all those scriptures that tell us about how God is to be worshipped and exalted. And he is exalted. God gets all the glory, and yet he's not prideful himself. This is a high and mighty being, all the glory, creator of the universe, name above every other name, Lord of lords, the Alpha and the Omega. He's still not prideful. And that's what the exaltation of the Lord looks like. Not the kind whereby we exalt ourselves. The exaltation of the Lord does not come with pride. We are trying to destroy we are the ones exalting ourselves, because that one leads to so many other sins. That one steals the love of God in our hearts. And where there is no love, there's a myriad of sins. There are so many things that we do because we love people. It's uncomfortable, but this is my family, this is my mom, this is my sister, he's my best friend, and I love them. So I will do this, I will sacrifice this, I will say this, even when I don't really feel. There's so many things that we do because we love someone. And there's so many other things that we can do, that we are capable of doing when we don't. And it's interesting how the love of God works. Agape love. when that love grows cold. The love of God is not an emotion. That's what makes it interesting. It's love in action. It's love in words. It stops being about how I feel about you and what I want for you, what I seek to give you, what I want to say over your life. That's what love and hatred is described as when it comes to the kingdom of God. This exaltation of the Lord continues to birth that love, that agape love that still seeks the best for others. Even when you're high up there, even when you had the chance to put someone down, you're now using your resources, your position of power to help others because you have been exalted and you have gained that wisdom of God to steward it. In that exaltation, you're still loving because God is still loving. God doesn't sit high on his on his throne, look down at us sinners and disregard us. That's why we're saying pride is idolatry. We're trying to sit on this high throne, look down on people who don't have as much money as us, who aren't as wealthy as us, who don't have the same status, probably who don't dress as well. Whatever reason that you and I are prideful, we look at them and we disregard them because of that status. But imagine if that's what God did with us. If he sat up on his throne as a holy, mighty, and exalted God, looked down at us who keep on sinning, and that sin gives us such a low position in the kingdom of God. What if he disregarded us because of it? Acting in the exaltation and in the wisdom of God still looks at that person who's at a lower position, who's at a lower rank and status, and still chooses to love. I mean, the moment we do that, I don't think we understand how many schemes of the enemy we would have destroyed. Because Satan benefits from our pride. His kingdom benefits from our pride. Us selfishly acting towards other people is literally what God describes as hate. If I find that scripture, I'll put it in the description because I need you to see it for yourself. Of course, it is in the amplified version. So yeah, I'll just highlight that verse. Destroying every single argument. I can't believe something that I overlooked so many times and misunderstood carried so much power. It's crazy that it was almost invisible. Now, we've said God hates pride. He not only hates it, it not only provokes him to anger, but this is one of those sins that really makes him act. It really brings out the wrath in him and brings out that character trait of him whereby he really is the God of vengeance. We need to put down these arguments. We need to destroy these arguments before they destroy us. This is one of those sins that not only have consequences in the now, but even in the life to come. Proverbs 16:18, a verse that we know so well, but we don't really see the full implication of what it's trying to say. Pride goes before distraction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Oh, I was proud in this situation, and then now I've lost my property. Oh, I was proud in this situation, ended up failing the exam. We just look at it from a worldly, if I may say, small implication sort of perspective. But when we're talking about distraction, pride going before distraction, I think we need to just draw biblical examples of what distraction looks like real distraction. Because what we talk about are just falls. A haughty spirit comes before a fall. But pride, distraction is a heavy term. And we don't really go deeper into it and actually see what distraction from the lens of God looks like. We said that we're going to talk about the Egyptians and Israel. And I stumbled, oh my days. Wait a minute. I've just opened my Bible and I have seen the verse where it talks about our love growing cold. Many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. Many false prophets will rise and lead many astray. And because wickedness is multiplied, most men's love will grow cold. But he who endures to the end will be saved. Matthew 24:10-14. I'm so grateful. Look at that. It just popped up. Anyway, Ezekiel chapter 29. We were talking about the Israelites and the Egyptians. The Egyptians enslaved the Israelites for, I believe, 400 years before Moses delivered them, right? And I wonder why it's coming all the way in Ezekiel. Because we see the story of the Israelites being enslaved and mistreated by the Egyptians in Exodus. There are too many books in the middle of these two. Or perhaps they were enslaved again. I don't really know. But it's saying, in the 10th year, in the 10th month, and on the 12th day of the month, the word of the Lord came to me being Ezekiel. Son of man, set your face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt. Speak and say, thus says the Lord God. So this is what God wants Ezekiel to tell Pharaoh, right? And to tell Egypt. And he says, behold, I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great monster that lies in the midst of his rivers. Crazy. That says, my Nile is my own, boastfully declaring, my Nile is my own and I have made it for myself. And now God says, I will put hooks in your jaws. This is the distraction, guys. I will put hooks in your jaws. I will make the fish of your rivers stick to your scales. I will pull you up from the midst of your rivers, and all the fish of your rivers will stick to your scales. It's God basically saying, you've made your boast in your worth, the rivers. My Nile is my own. I've made it for myself. I will take the fish in that river and make them stick to you. I will make your fish, in short. It's a bit funny, but it's also terrifying. God is also saying, I will abandon you to the wilderness, you and all the fish of your rivers. You will fall on the open field. You will not be gathered up or buried. I have given you as food to the wild animals of the earth and the birds of the sky, and all the inhabitants of Egypt will know without any doubt that I am the Lord. You know how crazy that is, guys? When we say pride comes before destruction. And this is now God, the God of vengeance. Verse 7 says, when they being Israel, grasped you, being Egypt, by the hand, you broke and tore apart their hands. When they leaned on you, you broke and strained their backs. You oppressed these people. Therefore, I'm going to bring a sword on you and cut off. It even says in brackets, destroy. And cut off both man and animal. And the land of Egypt will be a desolation and a wasteland. And they will know without any doubt that I am the Lord. Because you said the Nile is mine, and I have made it. Behold, hear this. I am against you, and am against your rivers, the Nile and its tributaries. Yani, even the Nile is taking a hit, man. And I will make the land of Egypt a complete waste and desolation. From Migdol, northern, to southern Syene, even as far as the border of Ethiopia. No man's foot will pass through it. No animal's foot will pass through it. It will not be inhabited for 40 years. I will scatter your people, basically. No one will even live here. You've made your boast in your land, in your Nile, the rivers and the wealth of this place. No one will even live here. I'll make this a wasteland. The destruction of the Lord. I will scatter the Egyptians. I will disperse them through the land. For how many years? 40. And God still continues. It's not even over. At the end of those 40 years, I will gather the Egyptians from the nations among whom they were scattered. I will reverse the fortunes of Egypt and cause them to return to the land of Pathrus, the land of their origin. Yani, Egypt wasn't their land. I'll return them to their origin, and they will be a lowly kingdom. It will be the lowliest of the kingdom. It will never again, listen to this, it will never again exalt itself above the nations. I will diminish the Egyptians, so they will never again rule over the nations. Egypt will never again It's like repetition. Have the confidence of the house of Israel. Their wickedness will be remembered whenever Israel looks towards them for help. Wow. Sometimes we just see these stories and we hear about them, we read about them. But when you put yourself in the shoes of whoever the subject is, right? Imagine if you were Egypt. Imagine getting to experience this side of God simply because you exalted yourself, simply because we chose to act in pride. We oppressed other people. And that's why I'm never even concerned when people start asking, oh, why can't God save us? Those people, oh, if God could do it for the Israelites, why can't He, show up in this area? In my mind, I'm not even bothered. That's not something that can even shake my faith. Because if you just go and simply see cases whereby God has withheld his wrath, if this is the same time period that I'm thinking about and we all know about, then we know that Israel was enslaved for 400 years. Imagine that person in the 211th year complaining that God is not hearing. In the 40-something year, in the 80th, in the 300 and something, 400 years later, they are free. An oppression that we first hear of in Exodus. As I've said, if this is the same timeline that we are all thinking about, perhaps you know that this is another one. Please inform me. But I'm going to go and fact check all these timelines. God is here avenging Israel like, from the moment this Pharaoh is being made into a fish and left into the desert to die, not even buried, meaning that dignity that he held himself in, that high regard he had for himself, has been thrown out of the window. The window has been destroyed. In fact, you no longer have a house. That regard is on the desert floor, desert bed, being eaten by wild animals. Egypt has been made a wasteland, the same land that flowed with all kinds of animals, food, riches, wealth, boasting in the robustness of the Nile. I believe that the Nile was quite something back then. It still is, but even just from the history that you learned, the mere fact that you could have water for your crops, a constant supply, that was true wealth. Remember when Joseph was the prince of Egypt, his brothers, the other sons of Jacob, were coming from the land in which they inhabited to Egypt because there was a famine. Like, this place was rich, was wealthy, and they made their boast in that. God made this place a desolate land. I think we forget sometimes that some of the things that we boast in, most of it being our wealth and our status, came from God. Meaning that if he could bring it to existence, he can easily, just like that, scatter that wealth. All creation is under the subject of God. He is sovereign. We're even seeing that wild animals and birds are being told, aya, enda ukule huyo, enda ummalize, like, he made the Nile. That's also something I'm getting here. We cannot boast in the riches and the wealth that God has control over. Our pride is just so senseless. It's so senseless. Paul even said, if there's anything that I can boast in, you guys, he was talking to probably his fellow Israelites or Jews. If you guys have something to boast about, if you think you have something to boast about, then I have even more to boast about. I am an Israelite, I am a Jew. I am from this tribe, I am from this. Paul, whose one soul was at the highest rank of the ancient day society, one of the highest ranks. And I even want to look for that. I remember it's in Romans, but I feel like he said it so many times, probably also in Corinthians. Okay, so in Romans, he didn't really talk about the boasting. Romans 11:1. I myself am an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham, a member of the tribe of Benjamin. Now, here we are. It's not Corinthians, it's Philippians. Philippians 3. Though I myself have reason for confidence in the flesh also. We're seeing an example of someone who had a reason to boast. But he's saying, if any other man thinks he has reason for confidence in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew born of Hebrews, and as to the law, a Pharisee. As to zeal, a persecutor of the church. As to righteousness under the law, I am blameless. But whatever gain I had, I counted as loss for the sake of Christ. And actually, I was told, I don't know where I heard this, probably a sermon or by someone who was just mentoring me in some capacity. Someone just said, if you're still trying to be humble, then you're still proud. This humility comes from the point of hiding yourself in the identity of Christ. We're emulating this image that God painted through his son, Jesus. Be this, do this, say this. Resist this other one. This one is going to hell. So our humility isn't coming from a point of trying to be humble in our own human capacity, because that will make us self-righteous. And self-righteousness will make us proud. The humility is the fact that we are counting all that we have to boast in as loss for the sake of Christ and his kingdom. The moment we begin to align with Jesus, we get to see how insignificant we actually are compared to a high and mighty God, high and exalted. He who deserves all the glory and all the honor. We're insignificant. And so that we may gain Christ and so that we may look like Christ, we're counting all of these other things as loss. It's not in our human capacity. It's not to look humble. It's to look like Christ. It's to look like Christ. And so best believe that as we're striving to look like Christ, there will be temptation after another to go back and act in our flesh, to boast. But we're putting that down and we're destroying it. So even as we're being told to humble ourselves by James 4:10, humble yourselves and you'll be exalted. We also need to see an example of what it means to humble ourselves. It's not actively trying in our human efforts. It's striving to look like Jesus. It's striving to know Jesus. It's gaining everything that we have in Jesus. Because the more we do that, the more we'll get to see more and more ways in which we can put down our flesh and put down every reason to boast. If Jesus tells us to love our enemies, and our enemy is acting out, and we have the power to be boastful, and we have the power to act in that earthly reason, that status, that wealth, Paul is telling us he counted all of that as loss for the sake of seeking, chasing after Jesus. That's how we humble ourselves, guys. That's how we're destroying these arguments. That's how we're valuing the knowledge of God. And honestly, I don't say I didn't expect this episode to be long because, as I said, the revelation was mighty. The connections were numerous. I haven't even mentioned all the cross references that I encountered because I already feel like this is a lot of content and a lot of scriptures. But I'll write them all down. I'll put them all down in the description. So if you have the time, actually, please make the time. The wrath of God. It terrifies me, but it fills me with awe at the same time. It's crazy. Like he's angered that much, but he also shows that he cares that much. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. This will probably be one of the longest, if not the longest, episode that we'll have. I don't believe we could have summarized it. I don't believe we could have made another episode out of this. Like it's what it needs to be. So if you've made it this far, I truly hope that this was worth your time and your efforts and your attention. And we need to just be more intentional about making most, if not all, of these messages applicable in our lives. I pray for the grace, the strength, and the wisdom to walk in what you've just talked about, even for me, that our love for God may keep growing hotter, that it may not grow cold, like we've seen in Matthew. Be sure to send this to someone, even just share something that you've learned. As we've said, we're chasing after a revival of this generation. No more bondage. No more bondage, guys. You can't keep falling away and not even knowing why. You can't keep struggling in our walk and not even know why. We can't be stagnant and not even know that we are stagnant. I mean, we need our eyes spiritually opened. And of course, don't forget to give this a like, a thumbs up, share, 5-star ratings on Spotify, whatever platform you're listening to. Be sure to engage so that many more people can get to hear from this, can get to listen to these messages and encounter a word from God. Now, have yourself a lovely and an amazing, amazing day or night, depending on when you're listening to this. Bye.